Everyone, Jordan here. I just wanted to step through how I am fully automating my telescope equipment at Starfront Observatory. There's a question that comes up pretty often inside the Discord. There's a lot of people there who are looking how to find out how to go through a fully automated process to be able to run, a multi-day sequence without necessarily having to interact with that sequence all the time. And I sent my equipment there in February of this year, 2025. I've been working on refining this process. I'm not going to claim that my process is perfect, but I figured I would share it, and maybe what I've done will be helpful for others who are looking to figure out a way to fully automate their setups at Starfront or at any other remote observatory that's out there. So before we jump into the sequence, I want to talk about some of the plugins I use because some of them are essential and some of them are nice to have, and we're going to talk about that. First one here is this connector plugin. Connector allows you to connect and disconnect devices within your sequence. And again, we are talking about inside of Nina here. Did not mention that at the top. So if you're using ASI Air or any other tools, this doesn't relate to you. This is specifically about Nina, Advanced Sequencer, and the plugins as part of that tool set. So connector is a plugin that allows you to connect and disconnect your devices within your sequence. So you don't have to manually connect them, via the interface. Another plugin I use is called Ground Station. This is not an essential plugin, but you're going to see I use it all the time. It allows you to send notifications from Nina outside of Nina. I use it to update my dashboard, which I have that allows me to monitor what's going on and also send notifications to my phone. So if I'm out and about and not necessarily, fervently looking at what's going on, I can still have an idea how things are going with the setup at Starfront. PhD tools on the edge of essential. It will allow you to shut down PhD2 from within the sequence itself. And so I find that necessary with the sequence to be able to shut down that application. Remote copy is one that I use, not essential, but it allows you to copy the files that are saved to another location, automatically. So that's helpful for my workflow, and you'll see how I use that. Sequencer power-ups. This one is absolutely essential. There's all kinds of components in here from, variables and, loop conditions and expressions and things that I use, spattered throughout my sequence. If you're looking to build a semi-automated or fully automated sequence, within Nina and their advanced sequencer, you need these power-ups. Shutdown PC, not essential. And I think we're coming up on the season where it might be. We're getting into the hotter months in Texas, and so shutting down the PC for the day so it's not running in that heat is going to be helpful, but you can make the sequence run without it. The last one is Target Scheduler. For a fully automated multi-day type setup, I'm going to call this essential. It's not absolutely essential. You could, set up a sequence with a specific target, run that target for multiple days, and then go in and modify to another target, but that's a lot of work. And I find Target Scheduler to make that whole process a lot easier and certainly empowers and enhances the automation. And so that's the plugins I'm using. You can see I didn't mention them all. They're not all relevant to this particular exercise, but yeah, so those are the ones that are important that you need to know about. So let's kick it over here. This is the sequence, right? So what I'm giving you here is probably the 30,000 foot view of the sequence. The reality is that for this to be a multi-day, fully automated sequence, you need an outer loop, an instruction set that just continually loops, that will never stop. The way I've done that is using this constant here called constant loop and setting that, I set that value up here to 100, and I say that this constant loop outer instruction set is going to loop so long as constant loop is greater than 0. So if for some reason I wanted to stop this, so the sequence would never run, I could set this value to 0, and it would just not run. Anything greater than 0, this thing's going to run indefinitely. And so we are going to nest everything else that we do within this outer loop that just continually runs with a single loop condition, and it's referencing that variable. I'm sure there's a number of creative ways to do this. This was the simplest to me from a programming mindset. It just makes sense. Set a variable that never changes and just check that condition every time you want to loop. Now, some of the other things I have going on here, I use variables not extensively, but throughout, and I do that to kind of track the status, things that have happened or things that haven't happened. This first variable is an equipment variable. Have we connected the equipment? And this primarily works so that when we get to the shutdown phase, I'm not trying to disconnect equipment that never was connected to begin with. I have another here. Do we cool the camera? We track whether the camera's been cooled or not. Again, so when we get to shutdown, do we warm it up or not? And the last one is one that is deprecated. I don't use this one anymore. I used it for a little while called Did We Image? It was tracking whether or not we actually took any images. It was affecting whether or not we did flats. That's all managed now via Target Scheduler. Before I was doing Sky Flats, and you can't automate them with Target Scheduler. So I had to track that. So that's what these variables are. You see I have descriptions in here like anyone else but me was ever going to see this sequence. Um, Now, one of the key things that we see here as we get hit is this line right here, which is wait for time. One of the challenges with Nina's sequencing tool, it's very powerful, but it's also a challenge, is that there is relative times, meaning you can set things like wait for sunset or wait for astro dusk or astro dark. And when you do that, those times are computed automatically based off of what day you're in. The challenge is those times all have a different reset time. I did a little bit of research. I couldn't figure out exactly when they reset and when they didn't reset. And so I was trying like to set this wait. I don't want any of this to start until sunset. Well, that's a problem because sunset, when we get through our whole sequence and clean up in the morning and go and say, is it sunset yet? It's actually checking yesterday's sunset. And so it's already past it and we kick right back into the loop. So one of the things that I had to do was basically set a baseline time that all of this starts. And for me, I picked 4 o'clock. So 4 o'clock in the afternoon, if the PC is on, it will start going through the sequence. And because of that, all of those relative times are the same every single night. Once we get done, if I don't shut down the PC, it flips right back up to the top. It's going to wait till 4 o'clock before we start trying to reference any of those relative times again. And so that piece is pretty important for all of this to work. Again, there might be better ways to handle that. It's just the way that I figured out how to make that clean so that it would be able to do a multi-night session without fighting those different timings and the relative timings and when they switch from day 1 to day 2. All right. Now, the other thing you can see here, I have 3 sequential instruction sets for startup, imaging, and shutdown. These are the 3 phases of the night, the way I've set up the structure. Startup is going to be mostly connecting all of your equipment and getting ready to go. Imaging is pretty clear. That's the time we're actually taking pictures. Shutdown is when we're cleaning up at the end. So we're disconnecting equipment or we're taking flats. That's the general idea. We're going to follow that same flow every single day. Let's go ahead and flip over to our startup. So when we look at startup here, I have a couple of loop conditions, but they're not really loop conditions, and I'll explain why they're there. First is I only want it to run once. That's probably a redundant command. I shouldn't need to put that in there. The second one here is time span. This one's really, really important. And the reason why this exists is we want to bail out of this instruction set if we get far enough into the time. So like I said, we start this at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If this waits for 15 hours, that would be 7 in the morning. If we get to 7 in the morning and startup hasn't completed, we just want it to stop. Like just move on so that we can clean up and go to the next day. How would that happen? Well, this happens if the roof stays closed. If we have clouds or weather or high winds or whatever reason that the conditions aren't safe for us to image, you're going to see there's several stops in this script where I'm waiting for it to be safe before we go do something else. When we get there, if the roof never opens, it will just stay. That's part of the design of this script or of this sequence is that, we need to accommodate for those safe conditions and if the roof closes. So in this startup, if we get stuck and we get to 7 a.m., it bails out. That's a key part. So now, and you can see we don't have any triggers in here. There's nothing we're looking for mid-sequence or looking for ways to bail out mid-sequence because something changed, and you'll see how we built that into the actual instructions. So here, again, using power-ups to set variables, we're making sure that equipment variable is set to 0. We're sending a notification to my phone saying, hey, the startup sequence has kicked off. We connect the safety monitor so we know whether it's safe or not. We give it some time to figure that out because it's not immediate. And then we do check, is it safe? And this is before really anything's going on. This uses that ground station plugin to push information to my dashboard using, in this case, MQTT. And it's going to tell me whether it's safe or it's not. Most times for the answer is it's not, but it updates my safety condition so that it knows what the current status is. We do this at different states throughout the sequence. So once the safety monitor is connected and I've done that update, now I'm waiting for sunset. So it's just going to sit there for a little bit. Once we hit sunset, then we really get started in connecting stuff. So I again send myself a message, sun is set, we're connecting equipment. I start RoboCopy. That's that application that copies files. The way that I do things is I save the files to that astrophotography sessions folder. That's where Nina is saving files to, and then I use RoboCopy to copy them into Dropbox, which then syncs them to the cloud so I can pull them down the next morning. There are a number of ways you can do this. Lots of people use Google, lots of people pull them down manually. So this isn't essential, it's just something that I do. It makes my workflow a little bit easier. I connect, then I start connecting equipment and I connect the switch, which in this case is the Pegasus PowerBox Advance. That's what everything is connected into. And so that's a core component of the setup. I connect that. I make sure that that's connected. And then this switch one value, because when I took these screenshots, it wasn't connected. This is actually the switch for turning on the 12 volt power to the 12 volt ports. So on my setup, I have 12 volt connections to my mount, a 12 volt connection to my camera, and a 12 volt connection to my flat panel. So this actually just turned those ports on so that 12 volt can be delivered to those devices. Wait for those to be able to come on. Again, we're in no rush. We still have time. And then start connecting equipment. And I connect devices one by one. That connector plugin can allow you to connect all of your devices. There are some reasons to kind of spread them out. You can figure out what the right process is for you. Little note here on this one, you can see I'm connecting my flat panel and immediately turn the light off. This is my good neighbor stance. I don't ever want to be the person that has a flat panel incident in any one of these buildings. So I'm a bit obsessive about anytime I am changing anything on the flat panel to make sure that flat panel light is off unless I absolutely want it on. And so I connect the device, make sure that light is off. Again, let those things settle out. Now we connect PhD2. And then once that's all done, we set this variable. Equipment, the new value is 1. So now when I get to clean up, I know we've actually made it through and connected everything. Once everything's connected, we're still waiting. I'm really waiting for astronomical dusk. Really, I'm waiting for 25 minutes before astronomical dusk because now I'm going to start doing some more things to get ready so that when we hit astro dusk, we're ready to go. And so in that, I again send myself a notice, and here is that first wait until safe. Why is it here? Well, I don't want to cool my camera preemptively if the roof is going to stay closed all night. I don't want that fan running all night, having to have that working and cooling. It's just going to add stress and reduce the life of the equipment unnecessarily. And so I wait until it is safe, until that roof is going to open before we start cooling the camera. This is where it could get stuck. That's why we have that loop condition up top saying if you've gone more than, 14 or 15 hours, just cut it off and be done. But assuming the roof is open, it's a beautiful clear night like it often is in Texas, we're going to say, go ahead and keep moving forward. We're going to ramp things up and we're going to cool our camera. This was a neat little snippet that Reg posted in Discord recently, where he set camera temperature variable based off of what ambient temperature was. And I thought that was pretty smart. So I integrated into my script here. Basically, the temperature is less than or equal to 22C. I cool the camera to -10. And then anything above that, I'm going to cool to 0. And you can see either way, I'm going to set that cool camera to 1 because I now know that I have cooled the camera. And when I get to clean up or shut down, I'm going to go and do the warming routine. Then set myself another notification. I like knowing what's going on. You can see that this has not been updated for this new this new intelligent cooling, conditional cooling, I should say, and it just tells me it's cooled to -10. So I'm gonna have to update that. Once the camera is cooled, I've set the switch for the auto do on the Pegasus box so that the do controller will kick on if we get into dewy conditions. So I turn on auto do. I set the tracking rate, and again, issue a wait until safe, just in case something happened while we were cooling and the roof closed. Because this next set of instructions you're going to see, we're going to start, moving the mount around, doing some stuff where I actually need visibility. And so, assuming that it's safe, we move on, and we really, we open up the scope. We move the scope to a defined section of the sky. We're going to run an autofocus routine to give us a baseline autofocus. We're going to solve and sync, and we're going to calibrate our guiding. So this happens once a night, so I don't have to calibrate other times. Once a night's probably even overkill considering that the scope isn't moving and things aren't changing, but it certainly doesn't hurt. And so we run this guiding calibration and stop our guiding, send everything home, and now we're ready to go. All that happens before astro dusk. So there's another wait for time in here, wait for astro dusk. That's when we're going to be ready to go. Send myself a message, and that's when we kick over to phase 2, which is our imaging sequence. So inside of our imaging sequence, this one is a little bit more involved. Less actual instructions. So if you were to compare them side by side, there's less actually going on. There's more logic that's happening here, though. And so here we have some triggers, and we're gonna cover these kind of backwards. We're gonna start down here with some of the common ones. Autofocus after HFR increase. So I'm watching, the stars. If they start bloating, we're going to run autofocus routine again. Center after drift, restore guiding. These should be pretty common if you're using Nina. Should be pretty accessible. This comes out of the power-ups, DIY Meridian Flip Trigger. They have many of these DIY triggers, which are actually pretty cool. I only use this one for now. The reason why I use it is because I can send myself notifications when the Meridian Flip starts and when it stops. So because I have a window 15 minutes before, 15 minutes after, to avoid a peer collision, I can know, when my mount has stopped and when it has started up again to handle that Meridian Flip. And, if I'm available and I can just kind of like peek in and make sure everything went well, I can do that. If I'm sleeping, well, then at least I know when it happened, right? And so, otherwise, a Meridian Flip, just a standard Meridian Flip trigger would work in here. The only thing I've added is the messages to myself. And this last one is an important one. There's several different methods for handling when the roofs close at the observatory or weather conditions are not ideal. We'll just use roof closing as reference here. Starfront provides a file that every customer has access to. You can run a safety monitor to check to make sure that that roof is open or closed. If it closes, obviously we want to stop our sequence. This when becomes unsafe is an incredibly clean way to do that. You throw it in as a trigger, and exactly like it sounds, when it becomes unsafe, these are the things you want it to do. I update my dashboard saying, hey, conditions have become unsafe. I send myself a notice on my phone, conditions have become unsafe. I stop guiding. I send it home. I close the flat panel cover. These are all things I do anytime that I'm basically returning the mount to home. And then it just sits there and it's constantly checking and waiting. And then once that becomes safe, once the status changes back to safe, if it does throughout the night, this next set of items are going to happen. And this is where you say, what do you do then? Well, I wait an additional 5 minutes just to make sure we don't have a whole lot of oscillation between safe and unsafe. I give it another 5 minutes, make sure that things are settled. I, again, update the dashboard, send my phone a notification, and then open the flat panel cover. If you're not using Target Scheduler, in here what you would need to do is you would then need to do like slew and center or slew, center, and rotate, and then you'd have to start your guiding and your process would start again. So because I'm using Target Scheduler, it does that stuff automatically. I don't have to add those commands in here, but just something to keep in mind. So that handles the triggers. That gives us safe and unsafe conditions with the roof. Also true for weather. If you're using the weather data, it really just, either one can trigger safe or unsafe. It will behave the same either way. And then the Meridian Flip, and then these other three that I have as triggers. Let's talk about the loop. So we want to image as long as we possibly can. I want to image until astro dawn. So that's one of the conditions. If I've got all the targets in the world and I can keep shooting, or I'm going at one target that's up all night, I'm going to stop at Astro Dawn. But if I don't have targets, if my target goes below an altitude I'm comfortable shooting, or I don't have any targets above those altitude, or moon avoidance is causing me to not be able to shoot anything, once target scheduler has determined that there's nothing more to shoot tonight, that also is a reason to kill this loop. So you can see either one of those things happen. We either hit Astro Dawn or target scheduler runs out of targets. That will kill this loop and move it down to the shutdown loop, or the shutdown sequence, I should say. Now we get into actual instructions. That was a lot of like what happens if and how do we handle loops, and then we say, well, what do you actually do in imaging? We use that, set that did we image variable, again, deprecated, not really using it for cleanup, but we set it because we're there. We put the target scheduler container in here to do its job. This thing's like magic, and this is not a target scheduler run through, and maybe that's something we should do at some point, but it picks targets and filters based off of a bunch of different criteria, shoots the best possible thing that you can be shooting at any one point in time. And it manages all that, so I don't have to like change the sequence every time conditions change, or I add a new target, remove a target, whatever. Now in here, in Target Scheduler, there's a chance that there's going to be a gap between targets, so it has this ability to go into a wait condition. Wait for me behaves much like unsafe. I'm going to send the scope home, I'm going to close the flat panel cover, and I'm going to send myself a notification letting me know that I'm sitting there waiting. And then after I'm done waiting, the opposite, right? Open that flat panel cover. And because it might be some time and maybe temperature has changed, I will run an autofocus routine and let myself know. These are just notifications if we change targets, so that I know that Target Scheduler has picked a new target, we've moved on to it. So that's the whole imaging sequence. Now we're gonna wrap it up here and go to Shutdown. So in Shutdown, no triggers and no loop conditions. Run straight through, because this process doesn't really have any conditions or a lot of conditions to it beyond what's in line. So again, send myself a notification. If you notice a trend, I like those notifications. And now this is where we're using those variables. We're saying if I have connected equipment, I have the chance of having started guiding. I actually have a mount that's connected where I could stop guiding and I can find home. So if we've connected the equipment, we're going to stop whatever was going on, make sure that we find that home position. If we cooled the camera, we're going to warm it up, and we're going to reset that cool camera variable to 0 so that we start with a clean slate the next day. Then we're going to wait for sunrise. And we wait for sunrise because I want to wait until it's light out so that I can take flats. And we'll step through there. For that, we're going to close the flat panel cover, and Target Scheduler manage flats for me. Now, that wasn't always the case. That's why that did we image was in there, because if you're doing sky flats, I didn't want to take sky flats if the roof was closed all night or if the roof was still closed. So I was checking to make sure that we had imaged. Now, because Target Scheduler handles it, if it's a day that we need flats, because I take flats, I think every 7 days for my projects, we will take flats. And if we don't, then we'll just move on. Once the flats are done, again, obsessively turning the brightness of my flat panel down to 0 and then turning the light off. Target Scheduler uses the trained flats, so it knows how bright to set the panel for those flats. Close that up, and now we start closing everything up, like we start disconnecting things. Another notification, turning off auto do, closing PHD2, closing the app itself, disconnecting PHD2 from Nina, waiting for that to settle, disconnecting this equipment, and then turning off the 12-volt ports. Again, waiting and letting that all settle. We're going to stop that robocopy in the background. At this point, it has been given a lot of time to make sure that all those images are copied over, but just to be sure, we give it another 2 minutes to wait for it to stop to make sure that all images have copied from that C drive to that D drive into Dropbox. Again, checking to make sure we've actually connected equipment, but if we have, then we are going to finally disconnect that Pegasus power box and the safety monitor, and now everything is disconnected. We're going to do a little bit of cleanup, reset those variables for did we connect equipment to 0, did we image to 0, send me a message, scope is in the home position, everything's disconnected, everything's good. Wait until 9 in the morning and then shut down the PC. Send myself a notification that's happening, and then shut down the PC. This is where I was not always shutting down the PC. Over the cooler months in the winter, I didn't necessarily have to shut it down, so it could run all day. and it would kick right back in the next morning, because if we go back to the overview, once that's done, and we look at this from the higher view, it's going to kick right back and get stuck at this wait till 4 o'clock. And then at 4 o'clock, it starts the sequence again. So anyway, that's how I do a fully automated Nina sequence for my equipment at Starfront. There's a couple other pieces that I didn't cover. You can automatically start Nina via a batch script when Windows starts, and you can start this sequence automatically. That's a key part of how to make this run, but I didn't necessarily cover that. It's been covered by somebody else. You can find that information in the Discord, and if not, hit me up in the Discord, and I will certainly send that information to you, show you where I got that from and how to make that happen. And yeah, or if not in the Discord, if you're not at Starfront, but this is still useful to you because you're somewhere else, I'm going to be uploading this to YouTube. You can just leave a comment in the YouTube video, and I will respond to it. I'm not much of a YouTuber, but I will certainly keep an eye on things and reply. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. I hope that this helps you develop more automated scripts for your imaging. I'd love to connect and geek out and talk about all things Nina or all things astrophotography, so don't be a stranger if you want to. And I think we'll leave it at that for today. Thanks.